welcome to the program Back to Farm. My name is Joshua Ishaya, your regular farm guide. The program today promises to be amazing as we'll be talking about rice cultivation in Nigeria. Rice farming in Nigeria involves various planting techniques depending on the farmer's preference, access to technology, and soil condition in Nigeria. The most commonly used planting techniques for rice cultivation are direct wet seeding and transplanting rice seedlings. Transplanting allows for better weed control and efficient use of land. However, it requires more labor, irrigation, and a longer growing period. Direct seeding is faster, but it results in lower yield due to competition from weeds, water stress, and other environmental factors. One significant challenge of rice farming in Nigeria is pests and diseases, which can significantly impact yields. The most common pests include stem borers, rice bugs, and rats, while diseases such as blast, sheath blight, and bacterial leaf blight pose a significant risk to the crops. Additionally, farmers also face challenges such as lack of access to finance, inadequate infrastructure, and climate change. The most commonly grown rice varieties in Nigeria are upland and lowland rice. Lowland rice is grown in flooded conditions, while upland rice, as the name implies, grown in non-flooded areas. Both varieties have significant soils and water requirements and can be farmed using different techniques. From the perspective of global food security, rice is a crucial crop, yet rice growing practices are still frequently reliant on outdated manual methods that are inefficient in terms of both industrial agriculture and environmental impact. Some of the environmental costs of today's rice paddy growing include the flooding of land to make it into cultivation fields, the massive emissions of greenhouse gas, and the overuse of agrochemicals. Fortunately, there are numerous methods such as the use of current agricultural technologies of how to grow rice more wisely, profitably, and sustainably. Rice is a grain high in starch, is a mainstay of the diet of about half of the world's population. No other crop cultivation is as crucial as human feed. The agricultural economy and the planet's ecosystem as rice growing, while these crops, especially newly planted ones, need a wet environment. Paddies, flooded lowlands, and waterlogged fields around rivers are common places to grow rice. Oryza sativa, popularly known as Asian rice, is most frequently cultivated and consumed type of rice in the world. There are two main kinds of rice: indica with longer grains and japonica with shorter grains. Some species such as brown rice come in both long and short grain varieties. The long grain crop is lower in starch and higher in dry matters than its short grain relative. Long grain rice has the highest economic return of all rice cultivars. The growing global population, rice remains an essential staple food. Hence, it is crucial to grow it as efficiently as possible by considering the best conditions for rice growth, while also minimizing negative impact on the surrounding environment. Growing rice, like any other crop, needs certain conditions to thrive. The most crucial rice growth requirements are related to climate and soil. Now, we will consider what growing conditions lead to bumper crop and which region should expect the finest harvest. Now, let's look at the ideal climate for growing rice. Originally from tropical region, rice is a warm season crop that requires constant heat and humidity to grow. It can be cultivated as an annual in warm climate, though even if you don't reside in the tropics. Most of the world rice grow in Asia, specifically in China, India, Bangladesh, Indonesia, and Vietnam. At the same time, Africa, Europe, the Americas, and Oceania all have some warm areas with suitable rice growing climates. During the growing season, the best temperature for rice is between 70 degrees centigrade and 99 degrees centigrade, and 37 so temperature above 99 degrees Fahrenheit have a harmful effect on crop. It is possible to grow it only where nighttime low stay of 60 degrees or higher for a minimum of 3 months annually. How come it's so important? Germination is temperature dependent, so the laws for the growing crop must always be above that mark. The needs of growing rice for exceed those of any other crop. Thus, only in locations with a minimum annual rainfall of 45 inches does rice growing take place. The best growing condition can be found in areas where yearly rainfall is between 69 and 118 inches. On average, paddy rice must be inundated for at least 10 weeks during the growing season, with water depth ranging from 1 inch at the transplanting stage to as much as 6 inches throughout the crop life cycle. What type of soil does rice grow in? While it is true that it can grow in just about any type of soil, it is most successful in rich, well-drained soil that can hold onto moisture. Also, it taps from sandy to clay will be suitable provided that they have an optimal rice growing pH of between 5 and 7.5 soil high in clay and silt, which are often unsuitable for growing other crops. Are ideal for growing rice plants because of how effectively they hold water. As the crop needs a great deal of water, it's best to plant it in soil that are easy to flood. Let's look at how to plant rice. Large-scale planting demands thorough planning, accurate execution, and constant monitoring. To guarantee a prosperous crop, major agricultural companies must take the following actions. Number 1. Choose a location with a flat terrain and enough water resources. The soil needs to be both nutrient-rich and well-drained. Prepare the land by getting rid of any rocks, trash, and weeds in the rice growing field. Plowing and leveling will provide a uniformly smooth and flat land surface. Amend the soil with organic matter and fertilizer as you see fit. Choose premium rice seeds for planting, with localized breeding for high yield and disease resistance. Guard the seed against diseases and pests by using fungicides and pesticides. Plant seeds with a mechanical planter to ensure uniform spacing. The ideal depth for sowing seed is about an inch, and the recommended planting distance between row of rice is 8 to 10 inches. By following these guidelines, large agricultural enterprises may build a solid foundation for plentiful crop production. There are different methods of growing rice, ranging from manual to highly automated, from traditional to cutting edge, but most countries still rely on tried and true growing methods that have been around for generations. Let's have a look at the most typical approaches. Let's look at wet growing. In this kind of rice growing, traditional grows in flooded areas or paddies. First, water is poured into the paddies until the plants are submerged, and then before harvesting, it is drained from the rice growing plantation. Dry growing. In this kind of growing, the crop grows in fields that are not flooded. This method is good for growing paddy crops in regions with reduced rainfall or lack of water supplies. Let's look at upland growing. It's well suited for areas such as hills or mountains where the topography does not permit flooding. Terrace farming allows for growing crops on slopes, causing minimal soil erosion. Aerobic growing is employed in places where water is scarce or flooding is not an option. The crop grows in soil that drains effectively and is only watered sparingly when needed. System of rice intensification (SRI). This type of rice growing prioritizes plant density, soil condition, and irrigation to boost yields. It calls for planting seedlings at a younger age, with more space between them and with less water than conventional approaches imply. Now, aquaponics or rice fish growing is a technique for cultivation that combines wet growing with fish farming. In flooded areas, fish are farmed alongside crops and their feces serve as fertilizer. Environmental conditions and available resources typically dictate the way to grow crops. Farmers must select the approach that best suits their unique needs based on the benefits and drawbacks of each option. Now, one will want to ask, why is rice better grown in waterlogged area? Growing rice needs much water to thrive. For this reason, growing rice over water rather than land is preferred. This approach to growing has many advantages. The growing crops can easily get to the water they need, with less water being wasted due to evaporation. Paddy fields keep the water level constant, which is crucial for rice plant growth and development. Most weeds and pests perish in the water. At the same time, water serves to offer a habitat for numerous aquatic species helpful to the environment. Certain fish and bird varieties prosper in the waterland where rice is grown and even act as natural pest controllers. Rice growing in water has the best condition for producing high yields. Growing the crop in flooded field is a time-tested and efficient practice. As a result, it has become a cultivation standard. Let's look at streamlining field work on the paddies using USA crop monitoring solutions. Global warming is a major cause of drought, salt water getting into the fields, and air and soil temperature changes that are bad for growing rice. Considering these, farmers must make the most of all their farming techniques to keep up with the growing demand for grain around the world. Using advanced technology of crop monitoring in agriculture makes it easy to plan all field activities at once, find problem areas quickly, and make data-driven decisions to address issues on the field. Now, let's look at irrigation. Rice growers have the responsibility of ensuring that their crop does not dry out at any point during the growing season. By adopting efficient irrigation methods, you may greatly cut down on water waste. Crop monitoring makes keeping track of crop water requirement really simple. The NDMI index is a measure of how well hydrated a growing plant is right now. Soil moisture issues or a plant's inability to take in enough water could be to blame for out of the ordinary index values. However, keep in mind that this feature is appropriate only for non-flooded dry field crop production. At the same time, crop monitoring can do much more than only track plant moisture level. It gives crop producers and field managers the possibility to assess root zones and surface soil moisture dynamics and evaluate soil moisture's effect on vegetation's indices. To ensure crop health and increase in crop yield, you need to perform rice growing fertilization at just the right time and just the right rate. With the help of USDA crop monitoring, you can now use fertilizers and other agrochemicals on your grain crops with pinpoint accuracy. After analyzing the vegetation in your field and making a zoning map, you can tailor your fertilizing program to the needs of each specific rice growing areas. This means less money spent on fertilizer and less chemical runoff, polluting the soil and water supply. Let's look at weed pest and disease control. Employ herbicides to kill off weeds growing in your rice fields that might otherwise steal water and nutrient from your crop. Weed and pest detection and eradication should always be a part of your monitoring plan. However, pest and weed control is just the beginning. Rice growers constantly struggle with various devastating crop disease. EOSDA crop monitoring offers a solution to this problem: a comprehensive disease risk detection for rice paddocks. What's so good about monitoring potential threats with our platform? Multi-field monitoring. Add your paddock to receive individualized risk assessment. Early warming system get alert based on up to 14-day meteorological forecast and rice growth stages. Broad diseases coverage. Monitor for prevalent rice disease such as false knot, blast bacterial leaf, blight brown leaf, spot grassy stunt, virus, many other. With your SDA crop monitoring as a part of your farm management strategy, you will have a powerful tool to anticipate and mitigate disease risks. Now, let's look at how long does rice take to grow. Rice varieties, growing conditions, and agronomic practices can all affect how long it takes for plants to mature. Most cultivars requires between 105 days and 150 days from sowing to harvest. However, some types can take up to 180 days to grow. In general, transplanted crops mature more quickly than direct seeds. Rice can be farmed year-round and harvested several times a year in tropical places with consistent warmth and plenty of precipitation. In contrast, in areas with 4 distinct seasons, the rice growing period often coincides with the wet season, providing sufficient rainfall and temperature favorable for crop cultivation. When is the rice growing season? Rice is best planted in the spring-summer and harvested in the fall-winter. For instance, in southern states of United States, rice is often planted in April, May and harvested in September, October, while in many Asia countries, the rice growing season typically shifts by 1 month. It starts in May, June and ends in October, November. Rice harvesting and post-harvest techniques. The act of harvesting rice. Now, let's look at rice harvesting and post-harvest techniques. The act of harvesting rice, which entails removing the grains from the plant, is an essential stage of growing processes. Harvest timing has a significant impact on both the quantity and quality of the crop. It is typically harvested when the grain have reached their full size and maturity. Let's look at when to harvest rice. For directly sown plants, the best time to harvest is between 110 and 120 days after sowing, while for transplanted plant, it is between 100 and 110 days after transplanting. Look for the following signs to make sure that rice is at the ripening growth stage. Number 1. Proportion of mature grain per pinnacle. When 80% to 85% of the grain have turned yellow, it is time to harvest. Days since sowing. For late maturing types, the best period to harvest is between 130 and 136 days. For medium duration varieties, it's between 113 and 125 days, and for early maturing cultivars, it's about 110 days. Harvesting in the dry season is best done between 28 and 35 days after heading while during the rainy season, it is best done between 32 and 38 days after heading. Water content. The optimal water level for grains is 20 to 25% just before harvest. As a rule of thumb, grains should feel solid yet not brittle when pressed between the teeth. Moreover, the crop must be harvested while the soil is fairly dry, because then it is much easier to pick the crops close to the ground. Through EOSDA crop monitoring, you can get accurate agrometeorological data about precipitation, air temperature, and speed, and other growing conditions that can help you plan your harvest activities. If severe rainfall has occurred or is expected in the rice growing field, historically weather data and a 14-day weather forecast will let you adjust the upcoming harvesting work. Even if you have to manage a lot of fields all around the world, this is not an issue. Should there be a risk of bad weather and any of them, now, let's look at harvesting process and methods. There are several steps involved in harvesting rice, and these can be complicated one at a time by hand or call on all ones with the use of a combine harvester. While harvesting manually with a sharp knife or sickle, it is critical to cut the stalk no more than 1 to 2 inches above the ground, and this way farm workers remove stem borers, larvae that will otherwise be left in the stumble and might cause severe crop loss in the next rice growing season, even up to 100% in the case of the most destructive pest in Asia, strip stem borers. A combine harvester typically cuts the crop, delivers it to the threshing system, threshes clean, and then deposits it in a wagon. While harvesting, the combine leaves a windrow of straw in its wake. Now, let's look at post-harvest procedures. After the crop has been harvested, there are a few more steps to be taken. While using a combine harvester, all of these operations occur simultaneously. But if you opt for manual collection, you have to do the following steps in order. Threshing. Paddy grain separation from the remainder of the harvested crop. It should be done as soon as possible after harvesting to prevent grain rewetting and minimize its breakage. Cleaning. Getting rid of immature, empty, and non-grain matter before cleaning dry the grains, if needed, and then clean them carefully to avoid damage. Field drying and stacking. Two common post-harvest practices are not advised due to the rapid crop quality decline and significant losses they can entail. Now, let's look at the environmental impact of growing rice and sustainable solution to them. Now that we know how rice is grown and harvested, that's one more major concern. Is growing rice bad for the environment? To put it briefly, yes. Farmers have resorted to more agrochemical use and more intensive irrigation methods to keep up with the surging demand for grain. Let's look at the reason why there's such a negative eco impact of growing rice. Many thanks for staying with us on ARCN TV, where we've been talking about rice cultivation practice in Nigeria. As we know, improved processing techniques have also played a significant role in boosting Nigerian rice farming. The adoption of modern milling machines and processing plants has improved the quality of rice production in Nigeria as well. Efficient processing also reduces the amount of waste produced and increased profitability for farmers. In conclusion, innovation has become a driving force for Nigerian rice farming, leading to increased productivity, sustainability, and profitability. Adoption of mechanization, irrigation, improved seed varieties, and processing techniques have resulted in the growth of the rice industry in Nigeria. On behalf of the crew members who made this episode of the program Back to Farm possible, My name remains Joshua Isha, your farm guide, any day, anytime. Remember, agriculture has been the bedrock of Nigeria, and as such, we all must all come together in the 21st century to actually roll our sleeves and let's get to the farm so we can be able to feed the nation and attain food security, which is in a state of emergency today in Nigeria. Bye for now.